your consciousness expands in every direction. It means there's no up and there's no down. It means there's no right and there's no wrong. It means that there's no north and there's no south. It means that there's no beginning and no end. You begin to move into a consciousness place within yourself that you'll find yourself, when you move into spirit, you're going to find yourself doing things that you don't understand why you're doing them. In 1994, when Immaculee was imprisoned in this tiny little bathroom with 7 other people with no facilities, she did something that I found so astounding. What she did when she entered that bathroom is she asked the pastor whose home she was in, "Do you have an English and a French dictionary?" And she learned English while she was being hunted to be killed. For what reason? Why would someone who is in that kind of a state practice, day in and day out, up to 8-10 hours, and she couldn't speak. They didn't speak for 91 days. No sound whatsoever. So 5 years later, she is a survivor. She represents less than 0.5% of the Tutsi women of Rwanda who survived. All the rest were killed. She went into a place within herself and taught herself a language that she was going to need 5 years from now. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. And then 5 years later, in 1999 or 2000, she had when she was here in America on an asylum visa, married, living out on Long Island, has 2 children, is assimilated into our culture, is a great spokesperson for transcending hatred on the planet. She woke every day, 3 o'clock in the morning, before she went to work at the UN, and wrote every little detail of what happened in those 91 days. 150,000 words she wrote and gave that to me 5 years after that. But how did she know in 1994 that she was going to be in America and coming up on a stage like this and talking to our country in a language that is her 3rd language? How did she know that? Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you have an inkling, when you have, like Ryan, when you have a feeling within you that this is something that you have to do, that you can't be stopped from doing it, the whole world changes. And you start and you listen to it. And you find yourself, if someone hands you a book, and then someone else talks about that book, and then someone else mentions it, and then you see the author on television, and all of a sudden you start saying, wait a minute, I've got to listen to this. I am being directed. I'm being called. I trust in this. I totally, completely trust. Your consciousness expands in every direction when you enter the world of spirit, and you get yourself pulled in these directions, and you allow yourself to be pulled in that way. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. Nothing is impossible. And whatever you find yourself doing, that's what you allow yourself to do and what you allow yourself to be. There's a great quote by Rumi. He's just one of the greatest. Every tree and plant in the meadow seemed to be dancing. Those which average eyes would see as fixed and still. That's what happens when your consciousness expands in every direction. You see, you understand the Tao. The Tao is like it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. You're a sculptor and you sculpt yourself a vase. And what do you think makes the vase? What makes the vase is not the tile, and it's not the substance of the material. It's the inner space within there that is surrounding it. Without that inner space within, there can be no vase. And without that inner space within you, there's no you. You're not skin and bone and all that. You are. That encapsulates an inner silence, an inner place that is totally and completely yours, uniquely yours. Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you do, you start practicing things like kindness, where judgment was before. I've often said that when you have a choice to be right or to be kind, just pick kind. Why? Because it's more closely aligned with your spirit. You begin to exude something called love. You feel it for everyone. Believe it or not, at the end of Immaculee's book, she goes to the prison where the people who were her killers, one was her mathematics teacher. And what happens is that you begin to embrace a kind of love even for the people who would do such harm to you. And I'm telling you, that's what saved her. You'll see that when you read it. That's what saved her. The ability to go to that place within, that place of forgiveness. As Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Powerful thinking. You become an instrument of truth. You become someone who listens. You become someone who is God realized.